This is a supplemental module to Module 5 for the Oregon Statewide Assessment of English Language Arts and Mathematics. However, this supplemental Module 5A will pertain to only the ELA Statewide Summative Assessment. Module 5A addresses changes to text-to-speech support guidance, describes the differences in use for the ELA Computer Adaptive Test and the ELA Performance Task, describe the difference between the designated support versus an accommodation support within the ELA assessment, define the difference between what is a reading passage compared to what is a reading source, and review where to make changes in the TIDE system through the OSAS portal. The following changes have occurred. The Oregon Department of Education has expanded the use of text-to-speech for the English Language Arts Performance Task as a designated support. Test administrators will be able to set text-to-speech settings for ELA CAT and ELA PT test differently. Student test settings in TIDE will be broken out into two columns for the ELA CAT and the ELA PT test. For the ELA CAT, text-to-speech in the ELA CAT for stimuli refers to the reading passages associated with Claim 1 reading. This support is only selectable as an accommodation for students whose need is documented in an IEP or 504 plan. For more information, please see Table 2.5 of the Oregon Accessibility Manual. For the ELA PT, text-to-speech in the ELA PT for stimuli refers to the reading sources embedded in the ELA PT associated with Claim 4 research and Claim 2 writing, otherwise known as the full write or writing extended response. This support is now selectable as a designated support. For more information, please see Table 2.3 of the Oregon Accessibility Manual. Differences between designated support versus accommodation support. A designated support accesses features of the assessment available for use by any student for whom the need has been indicated by an educator or team of educators with parent, guardian, and student. Designated supports are typically used for students identified and/or receiving Tier 2 or Tier 3 interventions, and are familiar with this type of support as part of their regular classroom instruction. Accommodation support accesses features of the assessment available for use by any student with a documented individualized education program or Section 504 plan only. See Table 1.1 of the Oregon Accessibility Manual. Text-to-speech support for the ELA CAT reading passages applies as following. For ELA CAT reading items, which include the questions and answer choices, are still available as a designated support. ELA CAT reading passages are defined as the reading stimuli that appears left of the reading items and is an accommodation support only for students whose need is documented in a IEP or 504 plan. Please note, in order to activate text-to-speech for those students whose need is documented in an IEP or 504 plan, the student will need to select the Reading Passages tool icon and select Speak Passage. The passage will be read in entirety from beginning to end. If a student selects just a portion of the passage, an additional icon will appear, allowing the student to select Speak Selection. As a reminder, it is important for students to understand how the text-to-speech function operates within the online delivery platform prior to administration. Text-to-speech support for the ELA PT and reading sources applies as follows. ELA PT reading sources, which include Part 1 task directions, and Part 2 Writing Extended Response or Full Write directions are now available as a designated support for use by any student for whom the need has been indicated. Please note, in order to activate text-to-speech as a designated support, the student will need to select the Reading Sources tool icon and select Speak Passage. The passage will be read in entirety from beginning to end. If a student selects just a portion of the passage, an additional icon will appear allowing the student to select Speak Selection. ELA PT reading sources are also defined as the reading stimuli that appears left of the research items or writing extended response directions, and is also now identified as a designated support. As a reminder, designated supports are typically used for students identified and receiving Tier 2 or Tier 3 interventions and are familiar with this type of support as part of their regular classroom instruction. Additionally, please remember, when setting designated supports, it is important for students to understand how the text-to-speech function operates within the online delivery platform prior to administration. To access the TIDE system to make any support setting changes, use the Oregon Statewide Assessment System portal. Either a district testing coordinator or test administrator account is required. To access the TIDE settings, start by clicking on the Test Administrator icon. Please note, if you've not completed the required training for these accounts, you may not access the TIDE system or make any support changes. Once selecting the Test Administrator icon, users will select the Test Information Distribution Engine, or TIDE icon. Once navigating to the appropriate site, users will use the following screen preparing for testing. To access the student support settings, using the Student Information drop-down menu, select the View, Edit, Export Student Test Settings and Tools icon. Users will select the appropriate district and school to access test settings. Once complete, the user can use the search icon to find individual student settings. A pop-up window will appear, allowing the user to view results. Once selecting the View Results button, a new screen will appear with student information. Users can edit individual support settings by selecting the pencil icon on the far left of the screen. Text-to-speech support settings are located under the Embedded Designated Supports section for both the ELA CAT and ELA PT. Again, text-to-speech in the ELA CAT for stimuli refers to reading passages associated with Claim 1 reading. This support is only selectable as an accommodation for students whose need is documented in an IEP or 504 plan. Use must be written into a student's IEP 504 plan. Undocumented use of text-to-speech for reading passages associated with Claim 1 reading result in an invalidation. The new expansion of text-to-speech support for reading sources applies to only the ELA PT. To activate the designated support for the ELA PT reading sources, select the Text-to-Speech drop-down menu under the ELA PT tab. Once selected, the user may change the setting to Items, Stimuli, which refers to the ELA PT reading sources, or Items and Stimuli. For more information and additional support or resources, please contact your district testing coordinator. The ODE assessment team can be contacted by either visiting the ODE assessment webpage on the Oregon Department of Education website or emailing the ODE assessment support team at ode.asmt-team@ode.state.or.us.